What if there was a podcast that did it all? Sports, politics, world events. Well, that's what we've got. You're listening to C&C Talks.
Hello everybody, I'm Colin, and welcome to episode 11 of the C&C Talks podcast. Now, you may have noticed already, because it's kind of hard to miss him, that Charlie is not here today. Now, you might be wondering where he is. He is in another country. We're not exactly sure which one, but he's somewhere on the map, hopefully, and hopefully he'll be back next week. But until then, we'll look forward to having fewer bloopers during tapings. Before we get into it, a reminder that we release every Tuesday or sometimes Wednesday, or in this case Thursday, but normally it'll be on either a Tuesday or a Wednesday. This is a podcast about politics, world events, and sports. We are taping this actually Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday, August 3rd at about 4:00 p.m. Pacific time. And before we jump into it, actually, there's a whole ton of stuff that we did not manage to fit into this episode. For example, the Biden administration has taken out the leader of Al-Qaeda. Nancy Pelosi is visiting Taiwan, and Alex Jones is currently under trial in what may be one of the wildest trials that's ever really been seen. We'll try to cover some of that stuff next week. For now, let's get into this. And I'm going to start with the separation of church and state and the fact that it is quite honestly under attack on the right. With the Republican Congresswomen, Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene, very much QAnon Congresswomen, they have made comments recently that have just clearly opposed that right. For example, Boebert said, "The church is supposed to direct government, not the opposite way. The church is supposed to influence government. The Bible says that government rests on God's shoulders." Again, that is an anti-constitutional view. Right, Zach? Bringing in Zach, one of our producers here.
Yeah, I think it literally says in the Constitution that you're not supposed to have that happen, that government is supposed to be separate from religion. And it's because if it's just one religion controlling the government, then it's not really representing the whole of the American people, because lots of different people have are subscribed to lots of different religions. So if there's only one controlling the government, it's not really fair.
Yeah. We could maybe look at the Republican Party, though, as a very Christian party. And there might be better evidence of this than the fact that Marjorie Taylor Greene has said that their party should be a Christian nationalist party. That's an anti-government party, an anti-constitution party. That's what that is.
Yes, I completely agree with that.
Yeah, and I think that the broader point to this is, right, this is the direction that the GOP is headed. It's not just two people. Greene and Boebert, while 10 years ago they may have been in the fringes of the Republican Party, they are now the mainstream of the Republican Party. They have a lot of influence in that Republican caucus in Congress. Moving on.
It's a big one.
Yeah, moving on. Donald Trump, former President Donald Trump, he is under federal criminal investigation. It might be a good time to remind you that no former president has ever been indicted before. And he is under investigation for January 6th. He could potentially be charged with seditious conspiracy and or conspiracy to defraud the United States. This is an investigation that seems to be progressing quickly. There's already a grand jury that's seated and is questioning witnesses. Former White House counsel Pat Cipollone has been subpoenaed to speak to that grand jury. Also, former Trump aide Cassidy Hutchinson, who You'll remember that blockbuster testimony. She is cooperating with that investigation. That could present big problems for Trump, Zach.
Yes, it could. Very big problems. And honestly, I think that's a very good thing because Trump needs more problems than he has right now.
Hear to that. The primary elections, there were a whole ton that took place on Tuesday, including in our home state of Washington. And while Patty Murray, the incumbent, did win, that's not really the most important race. The most important ones were involving Congresswoman Jamie Herrera Butler and Congressman Dan Newhouse. These are two Republican members of Congress from Washington State who had voted to impeach Trump for his actions regarding January 6th back in January of 2021. They are both being primaried. It looks now like both of them will probably advance out of their primaries. Nothing is official there yet, but that is the direction that it is headed. In Missouri, Eric Schmidt has won the GOP nomination for Senate there. He's currently the Missouri Attorney General. The incumbent in that race, Roy Blunt, he's retiring. Schmidt was challenged by Eric Greitens, the former governor of Missouri, who actually had to resign as governor because of sexual assault problems, has also been accused by his ex-wife of abusing her and their 3-year-old kid. So not somebody that you want to be governor. Trump had originally endorsed Greitens, had then unendorsed him. But then just on Monday, he issued an endorsement. He said he was endorsing Eric. He did not say which Eric, but I do know that they both accepted his endorsement and thanked him for it, because of course they did. And while I say that, I still am under the belief that Trump is losing power in the GOP, partly because Fox News, which was his biggest microphone, honestly, is starting to turn away from him and look towards other prominent Republicans, including Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. In Arizona, it's not yet official. Kari Lake will likely win that GOP gubernatorial primary in that state. Karen Taylor Robson looked like for a while that she might, but Robson is backed by Pence, Lake by Trump. It's now looking more and more likely, though, that Lake will win. And even though she looks like she's going to win, she's still claiming fraud, because that is the thing now. The incumbent in that race, Doug Ducey, he's term limited. In the GOP's Senate primary in that same state, Arizona, Blake Masters won. That's a win for Trump. He's endorsed Masters. And Arizona House Speaker Rusty Bowers, he's likely going to lose his primary. Bowers testified publicly at the January 6th hearings and implicated Trump. A pro-Trump candidate has defeated him. So that's a major upset to Zach, for them to lose their their Speaker of the House in Arizona.
Yeah, it's probably, I mean, that's something that really destabilizes the government in that area. It's not a good thing.
Yeah, and I mean, the Arizona government right now is already chaotic. There was the whole Cyber Ninjas thing from last year, which cost the state a whole ton of money. So Mark Fincham won the GOP Secretary of State primary in Arizona. If he wins the general election, he will be in charge of Arizona's elections. And this is a problem, because this is someone who's a QAnon supporter, election conspiracy theorist, member of the Oath Keepers, a white nationalist group, and was part of the January 6th mob, which just objectively does not believe in democracy. You're putting that person in charge of your democracy, potentially. But potentially the biggest result from this week was in Kansas, where there was a measure on the ballot that would have created an amendment to the state constitution that would take away the constitutional right to abortion in that state. But the amendment failed. A huge win for pro-choice advocates. This is a deep red state, and yet the measure failed by about a 60-40 margin. So just a big win for Democrats and potentially a sign of what could come in the midterms. I think that it's not going to be as big of a red wave as some people may think. In Congress this week, the Senate passed the CHIPS Act. This is a bill increase our country's ability to make semiconductor chips and compete with China. This is a bipartisan bill, sort of how Mitch McConnell did say that the GOP would filibuster it unless the Democrats agreed not to go through with their reconciliation bill for Build Back Better. And Manchin promised that they wouldn't, so the Republicans voted for it. However, minutes after the CHIPS Act passed, Manchin and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, they announced a deal on a scaled-back Build Back Better bill. Unclear whether it'll actually pass. Kyrsten Sinema, another moderate from Arizona, would still have to support it. It needs every single Democratic vote in the Senate because it's a 50-50 Senate. So in this bill, it'll reduce the deficit by $300 billion. It'll fight inflation. It'll reduce carbon emissions 40% by 2030. It'll lower drug prices. It'll increase taxes on large corporations and the wealthiest in the country. The GOP senators actually, though, responded by blocking a bill that would give health care to veterans exposed to toxic waste. They're claiming it's because the Democrats have some provision in the bill that would allow them to use the funding for other purposes. That is false, however. That provision just does not exist. It's actually pretty much because they're just mad at Democrats for introducing a bill to fight inflation. It's something that they try to blame Biden for. But there's an outpouring of fury directed at the GOP for blocking the bill, which seemed to cause them to change courses because the bill did end up passing on Tuesday night, which thank goodness for that. And now we'll get to a couple of interesting stories. We'll start with Ivana Trump's death. Do you want to talk about this one, Zach?
Yeah, this was an interesting thing. So Ivana was died recently. This, if you don't remember, this was Trump's ex-wife, who he cheated on, and now she died of blunt impact injuries, and she's now being buried in one of Trump's golf courses, in a corner of his golf course, because of the tax cuts that are sometimes given to what's the word?
Cemeteries.
Yeah.
He's declaring his golf course a cemetery now, which is wild.
Yeah.
And insulting.
Yeah, it is insulting.
Joe Biden has gotten COVID again, unfortunately. He just got over his first bout with it last week, but it's not a common rebound case, but they're not especially uncommon, especially if you take the medication Paxlovid that he took. Let's look at the difference between Biden's statement back when Trump got COVID in 2020 to Trump's statement when Biden got COVID. So this was Biden's statement from October 2020. He said, "Jill and I sent our thoughts to President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump for a swift recovery. We will continue to pray for the health and safety of the president and his family." Trump's statement this week, though, was slightly different tone. So he said, Joe Biden's second bout of COVID, sometimes referred to as the China virus, was sadly misdiagnosed by his doctors. He instead has dementia, but is happily recovering well. Joe is thinking of moving part-time to one of those beautiful Wisconsin nursing homes where almost 100% of the residents miraculously, and for the first time in history, had the strength and energy to vote, even if those votes were cast illegally. Get well soon, Joe. Any reaction to that one, Zach?
Well, I don't think Joe has dementia. Joe Biden does not have dementia, first of all, and I don't know where that would have come from. That just seems like some weird conspiracy. Also, 100% of the residents have the strength to vote, I think that's a good thing. I just think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, but the alleging voter fraud with it, but it's just not a presidential statement.
It's not.
And I mean, I get that he's not president anymore, but he was. He still put out statements like that as president all the time. I mean,
yeah, it's not like his speeches actually changed when he became former President Trump.
Correct. And moving on, to One America News Network, they have been dropped by Verizon. OAN is a crazy far-right news channel. They're even further right than Fox or Newsmax. They've previously, in fact, said that they hope that Biden dies from COVID, or that Democrats should be executed. So, real great band of people there, rooting for the President of the United States to die. They now have almost no carriage, though, and can't make money. So get this, they're asking liberals to come together and save them. And finally, before we move on to talking about sports, this is kind of funny. 134 Republicans have voted against a bill to ban private ownership of lions and tigers. I mean, wow. Zach?
Okay. Is that really important? Lions and tigers. Really? Well, our country is falling apart. You're gonna vote for a bill that bans the ownership of lions and tigers. Yes, that's probably a good thing, but
well, I mean, I do get that argument, right? Why should they be voting on this at all? But if you're going to vote on it, why is most of the Republican Party voting against it? I mean, that seems crazy to me. Shouldn't ownership of lions and tigers be, banned? Just a thought? It normally doesn't end well.
It doesn't. It doesn't.
All right, moving on to sports, and this is a somewhat more somber sports section. There's still some of the normal stuff we already discussed, but we'll start with Brittney Griner. She has been a WNBA player, been detained in Russia for several months, arrested on bogus drug charges, let's be honest. The U.S. is now offering a deal to free her, which would involve the U.S. freeing a Russian arms dealer. So Deshaun Watson, the Cleveland Browns quarterback, has been suspended 6 games after being credibly accused of sexual misconduct by like 30 women. It was expected the suspension would be for a full season. The NFL is now actually appealing the suspension. They want it to be for at least 1 full season. But let's compare that to other NFL suspensions, Zach, because this is just wild. I mean, someone's been suspended a full season for gambling. Someone's been suspended for 25 games for smoking weed. I mean, what are their priorities?
I would ask the same question. That seems like somewhere most people go to, that seems like something most people go to rehab for. I mean, seriously? Gambling and smoking. Is that really what they're doing?
Yeah. But there's the trade deadline, that MLB Trade Deadline. Juan Soto has been traded to the Padres in a blockbuster deal. Padres also acquired Josh Bell. The Nationals get a very large haul of players. And then a couple of former top 10 prospects, shortstop C.J. Abrams, pitcher Mackenzie Gore. They also got first baseman Luke Voigt. The Padres were initially going to use Eric Hosmer, but Hosmer used his no-trade clause that's in his contract. He has since been traded to the Boston Red Sox. Robert Hassel III also went over to the Nationals, the Padres' number 1 prospect. James Wood, the Padres' number 3 prospect. And Jarlin Susana, the Padres' number 14 prospect. Soto was traded after he had rejected a 15-year, $440 million contract extension from the Nationals. His current contract is not up until 2024. That was not it for the Padres, though. They added and added. They got Brandon Drury from the Reds, had to give up the number 6 prospect. And they also got Josh Hader from the Brewers, arguably the best left-handed relief pitcher in all of baseball. This is a team that's looking very good for a potential postseason run. Andrew Benintendi has been traded to the New York Yankees. Royals will get back 3 pitching prospects. The Yankees will no longer have to start Joey Gallo out in left field, someone who strikes out pretty much every time he comes to the plate. Gallo, though, has now been traded to the Dodgers, actually. Few moves for the Seattle Mariners. Biggest one, Luis Castillo. Mariners now have a World Series caliber top of the rotation, honestly, with Castillo, Robbie Ray, Logan Gilbert. Castillo under team control through 2023, but the Reds making up very well in this deal. They're getting a few prospects. Shortstop Edwin Arroyo, who's only 18 years old, but arguably the Mariners' best prospect. Shortstop Noelvi Marte, someone who will likely debut next season, although likely at third base. And then a couple pitchers, Levi Stout and Andrew Moore. All that from the farm system, not anybody from the major league roster. Mariners also adding 3 other players, infielder Jake Lamb, pitcher Matt Boyd, and catcher Kurt Casale, which Casale at least fills a big need at backup catcher there. It's not great to have to run Luis Torrens out onto the field every 3 games. The Boston Red Sox, they've traded for Tommy Pham from the Reds and, as I mentioned, Eric Hosmer from the Padres, but they've also traded their catcher Christian Vazquez to the Astros, which is a odd strategy there for the Red Sox. Begs the question of how seriously they're trying to contend, because it feels like, adding a couple good pieces, but also letting a couple go. Whit Merrifield is traded from the Royals to the Blue Jays. However, Merrifield can't go to Toronto right now because he's unvaccinated, so the Blue Jays believe he'll now take the vaccine. I don't. Will he? Is there any reason to believe that? I don't know. Yankees traded for starting pitcher Frankie Montas and relief pitcher Lou Trevino. Montas, the second biggest starting pitcher available, bringing the Yankees some much-needed rotation help. They also added Harrison Bader from the Cardinals, giving up starting pitcher Jordan Montgomery. Phillies getting a couple pieces from the Angels, outfielder Brandon Marsh, starting pitcher Noah Syndergaard. It is a team barely clinging on to a playoff spot right now. Braves, they're adding Robbie Grossman from the Tigers, Marcel Iglesias from the Angels, and Jake Odorizzi from the Astros. Astros also adding first baseman Trey Mancini in a 3-team deal that sent Jose Siri to the Rays. The Twins, a couple more moves they made. They added starting pitcher Tyler Mahle from the Reds and relief pitcher Jorge Lopez from the Orioles. Twins currently barely leading that AL Central. Move on to some football. Training camp has just started, and the 49ers coach Kyle Shanahan has announced that Trey Lance will be their starting quarterback. He was the backup last year to Garoppolo. 49ers, it seems, now trying to trade Garoppolo, and I think that there's a very real potential that he gets traded to actually the Seahawks, who have an interesting quarterback battle of their own going on. Drew Lock, young player with some decent upside, who's come over in the trade for Russell Wilson, and Geno Smith, the backup for the last few seasons. If you were to ask me, I would say that Lock should be the starter just because there's more upside there. And I mean, sure, Geno Smith is probably he might be better this year, but if you're going with him, he's still not going to take you to the playoffs. He's Geno Smith, right? Drew Lock could take you to the playoffs. He could also win you only 2 games this year, but so what? Then you get a number 1 draft pick. You go and add a good quarterback, whatever. But the only reason that you would not start Drew Lock at this point would be if you actually thought that you had a chance to make the playoffs with somebody else, and Geno Smith is not that somebody else. A couple of Seahawks retired. KJ Wright signed a 1-day contract to retire as a Seahawk, and then Chris Carson, who struggled with injuries throughout his career, currently suffering from a neck injury. DK Metcalf, who had been refusing to play until he got an extension. He's now signed that extension for $72 million that will keep him under team control through 2025. Now, there's a couple of deaths in the sports world that we'd like to acknowledge. First is Bill Russell. He's 88 years old, time of his death. A Hall of Famer. Most people consider him to be among the top 10 greatest NBA players of all time. I at least personally have him at number 6. 11 NBA championships as a player, 2 as a coach, and 2 NCAA championships. 5-time NBA MVP, 12-time NBA All-Star, has the NBA Finals MVP trophy named after him. Just an all-around winner, and that is what he will be remembered as. Also dying this past week was Vin Scully, the voice of the Dodgers. For 67 years, he broadcast Dodgers games. One of the best baseball announcers of all time, certainly the best storyteller of all time in baseball broadcasting. So both of them, rest in peace. And then there was the Mega Millions. That's what we're going to end this episode on. Zach, you want to tell us about that?
Oh, yeah. I already think it's kind of ridiculous that anybody would actually buy these tickets because the chances of you winning are so low. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't do it. No, I'm not doing that.
Yeah. And also, every penny you pay goes to the person who wins. I mean, I don't know if it's every penny, but a lot of it goes to the person who wins. So you're just making their paycheck bigger. I don't understand why people do it.
Well, I don't feel like that would be a factor as to why they would buy it, but I feel like the chances are, apparently you have a 1 in 24 chance of winning some sort of prize, and the lowest prize that you could win, and frankly the most common one that you might win, would be for $2. And if the tickets cost $1, then you have a 1 in 24 chance of winning $2 and a 23 in 24 chance of winning $0. So that doesn't seem like a phenomenal investment.
Well, now I'm sold because I might get $1 out of it. I'm sold on it. You know what? I'm buying tickets next time. I might get $1.
It worked out pretty well for someone in Illinois, though. The jackpot was $1.2 billion. Someone in Illinois. It's unclear whether they've actually claimed it or not. You hope they've claimed it, because otherwise that's really unfortunate for them. However, with taxes, it really only comes out to like $450 million or something. So really the real winner here is the IRS.
Yeah, but I mean also, it's not like $450 million it's not
small pocket change.
Yeah,
not pocket change.
Not. It might be for Elon Musk, but it's not for most people.
No, that's enough to put anybody out of retirement. Into retirement.
Mm-hmm.
No. Yeah, no. It's not out of retirement.
No, not out of retirement.
That's going to do it for this episode. Make sure you subscribe. Episodes every Tuesday or Wednesday, anywhere you listen to podcasts. Make sure that you stay tuned for next week's episode, because we have a big announcement coming out. Also, follow us on Twitter at C&C Talks Podcast. Submit questions at anchor.fm/CC Talks. For our producer Morris, production designer Zach, was kind enough to join us on this episode, and our co-writer Drake, and of course Charlie, who's in some other land, maybe on Mars, who knows. I'm Colin. Thank you so much for listening. We will see you next week. Goodbye, everybody.